Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Venegas, and I am one of the podcast hosts for King County Recovery Conversations. And today I'm in the studio in person, and I'm joined by Johnny Ohta and Juju Pearce. And I'm really happy to have them here with me. We're going to have a wonderful conversation. Juju recently was one of the recovery speakers at the King County Behavioral Health Legislative Forum, and she knocked it out of the park. I'm really excited to have everyone who's listening or watching get to hear part of her story and Johnny's story and some of the amazing things happening to support youth getting into and staying in recovery. Juju, would you like to begin today by telling us a little bit of your story?
Sure.
How did we get here, all three of us, today?
Well, I was born in Seattle, Washington. I was going to be born in Escondido, California, on the reservation with my dad. But, stuff happened. My mom came over here because she thought she was going to come over to be with Kurt Cobain, even though he already died. She has schizophrenia. She's very mentally ill, but she has her hopes and dreams. I was born, whatever, and my dad was an alcoholic. He was in the Army, so he had some PTSD when he came back home. A lot of people that go through situations like that end up dealing with alcoholism or addiction or mental health issues. So I think they kind of just had it on their radar because when he came home, he knew that my mom was pregnant. My mom has been dealing with mental health issues and substance use disorder all of her life. I lived with them. Eventually, given what happened, I got taken away at 2 years old. And I got put in the foster care system, and I went through, I think, 3 foster homes. And then at 3 or 4, I got adopted by my adopted parents that I'm with now. For the most part, I actually had a pretty good upbringing. I had a little bit more identity issues than most kids. I think me and I think there was 3 people in my elementary school in my class that were people of color. Stuff comes with that. I didn't look like the people that were raising me. It didn't mean anything until I was 8 years old when I started really noticing a difference. But I'm sure you can get the gist. And then I hit 10 years old and I started getting really curious. I knew I was adopted because I was old enough to understand where I was and what was going on. And at 10, I looked up on the computer downstairs who my birth parents were, and I knew their names. I knew where they lived, in the area. And at 11, I got in contact with them, and I ran away to downtown Renton is where they're at. It's a low-income housing. And I went over there, and I thought everything was wonderful. I was I found my people. I don't need to be insecure anymore. This is what I'm supposed to do. And then they were using methamphetamines, fentanyl, all that kind of stuff. And I had this self-fulfilled prophecy that that's just what it was going to be for me. I knew substance use disorder might be a problem in the future, but I didn't know it was going to be as intense as it was. Also around this time, fentanyl was becoming a really huge thing. And I didn't know how intense that would get for me. But eventually, I went through addiction. At 12 years old, I was fully hooked to opiates. Back and forth. It wasn't... Actually, no, at 12, it wasn't a consistent thing, but I was doing drugs every day. It just wasn't just this one thing. I hadn't, found my thing. But at this time, I didn't know that I should be hiding this from people. So, pretty easily, my adopted parents found out. Sent me to rehab, got kicked out of school, whatever it was, kind of all the staples in a child that has drug addiction issues. I went to Sundown M Ranch in Yakima, and I was 14 years old, and it was life-changing. I came back, and I had a head full of recovery. I understood why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. And for like 13 months, I was doing pretty good. I stayed clean. I went to the recovery high school. I met a lot of wonderful people. But I didn't realize until I relapsed after that 13 months that I was only there because I was attracted to the people in recovery, not recovery. And I was also only trying to stay away and like out of the spotlight for my parents. And I didn't even realize that I was like doing all this sneaky shit behind the scenes. But that's just how my brain works. But I don't know. I guess I was. And then a good friend at the school passed away and I relapsed and it went pretty downhill. And like pretty quickly, I got worse than I ever thought it was going to be, homelessness. And then like, I don't know, before this last relapse, I knew I had addiction problems, but I didn't feel like an addict, quote unquote. Like, I just felt like a rebellious kid who did a lot of stuff. But then this time, like, holes in the face, homelessness, shooting up, meth pipes at 15 years old, I was like, okay, wow. Like, that's a lot different. And I was just talking with Johnny about this in the car, but that was when I realized, like, because forever and before that, I could make excuses for my addiction, and I would use the fact that I was an addict as an excuse to continue using. But, I mean, at this point, it was like I spent, I think, almost a year heavily using amphetamines and fentanyl and not wanting to do it, but continuing to do it. And that was when I made the choice, because even that situation, I could not make an excuse up in my head for. And people like Johnny came around. I had a pretty rocky relationship with this guy, and he was in contact with Johnny, and I already knew the recovery community. I knew what it was about, and I think in some ways that made me like less attracted to it. But you get pushed around people, and you put yourself around people for long enough, like you start becoming a little bit interested. But it was really helpful, because I knew that when I did want help, I knew Johnny was there, and I knew my parents were going to be supportive of it, and I knew the recovery high school was there to take me back. And eventually I did go back, and I got clean, and I never stopped working with Ryther or all the different resources that were handed to me years before that. I just didn't use them for a while. And then it became time where I was like, okay, I can do it now. And also, I think the biggest thing is the last time I got clean, almost 2 years ago now, that was when the Linwood Detox Center finally had a youth bed.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a thing. There was no detox in Washington State. That was
for adolescents, yeah.
Yeah. No, not at all. And when they opened one up, I kind of like saw an opportunity, and I was like, okay, cool. And, I don't think they really knew how to like recover a child, but it worked. And
detox a child.
Yeah. How do you detox a child? But yeah, it figured itself out, but I don't know. I put a lot of work in, and it's okay now. So yeah, and I'm still in contact with all the people that were there a few years ago. Not in my use, but the people that were reaching out. So they've been pretty consistent in my life, which is good.
Wow. Your story just includes so much, and I've been fortunate to get to hear a little bit more. Could you describe for us, like, where you were, like, living downtown with your boyfriend, and when you had that moment kind of clarity, and you like looked around yourself and went, oh my God, something's got to change?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah. She wants the bigger, the
I do.
the broader.
Yeah.
I do.
It's okay. We all want the drama. It was a low-income housing. There was like rats everywhere, cockroaches, whatever, but I didn't give a shit. It was a place for me to use and stay warm. And it was also a place for me that I didn't need to use around my family and put them in danger. And that, I want to put that out there. I was very aware of that. Like, using at home, I would leave foils places and forget them, and my parents would find stuff every once in a while, and I have a little brother.
Right.
And I didn't want, like, when I went to treatment, I asked them to clean out my room, and I was like, wear gloves or like have another addict come in and pull it out. They'll know how to do it. And they ended up being fine, but that was one of the main reasons that I needed to get away from there. And one of like I I guess it could be kind of termed as an excuse, but in my head it was the logical answer because I knew that I wasn't going to stop very soon. So I went downtown and I was living on this place like on First and Blanchard, and I was with this, I would say, boyfriend. I mean, we were definitely flirty, but I was living with him and his girlfriend, his pregnant girlfriend, and we were staying down there. And towards the end, he actually became kind of like a good friend. But he was gone, and I had gone down to Safeway to like go steal a bunch of like groceries because, and this is the most adult I had ever felt in my life. I was like, I'm getting groceries, I'm cleaning the house, I'm doing laundry. Like, I thought that I was like kind of on top of it. And I was like, this is what adults do. No, not at all. But I came back to the house after stealing a bunch of stuff. I put it in the fridge. I went over to go, I didn't have any dope on me, so we had a trash can with foils on it, like empty foils, and next to it was a trash can we used for like actual trash. And, you know, at some point you put actual trash in the foil trash. It's a crazy sentence. But I went over to go see if there was anything left on any of the foils, and I saw like an overdosed mouse in there. And I mean, the whole room was a mess. There was like holes, or like the paint was being peeled off of the walls, because I don't even remember what my delusion was during that time, but something was in there and it shouldn't be in there, and I was picking off the paint and whatnot and whatever, and I just looked around, and it's like, I mean, I was high at the moment, but like I sobered up for a good 60 seconds, and I like just like took everything in around me, and I was like, so I want to say disappointed and I want to say disgusted, but it was really just a little bit of both. Because, like, I feel like a lot of children of addicts make their promise to themselves, like, oh, I'll never do that. I'll never do drugs. Right. And then you do drugs and you're like, oh, but it's not going to get as bad. And then it was worse. And worse at, like, 16, and he's, like, 61. You know what I mean? So, like, you find it in there. And I just looked around and I was like, holy fuck, this is disgusting. What am I doing with my life? Like, I'm not going to get anywhere. And also I got like a little like from like, I remembered like all the stuff I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And like, it wasn't it. And my adopted parents at the time, they had been in contact with Johnny. They met Johnny a few times, and, you know, they went through the whole, like, rodeo of getting clean with me the first time around, so they were educated in most areas of, like, what addiction looked like, but they hadn't seen what my addiction looked like that bad yet, because I would keep my location on and stuff like that, because I wanted them to know where I was, and I wanted them to know, but they knew I was on fentanyl. I was open with them about that. I told them, this is what I'm struggling with. I don't want to do it anymore, but it's not going to stop anytime soon. And on that day, I called my dad, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, we can go. But, like, 5 more days. I need to get high for, like, 1 more week and figure my shit out. And, of course, they were like, yeah, 5 more days, sure. Like, whatever. But I think it might have been a little bit different for my father, because I don't think they'd heard me reach out to them before. I mean, the times before that, it was their idea, and I was like, sure, like, we'll give it another try. But this time I was asking my parents for another try, and that's where the switch was. And like 5 days after, believe it or not, I went to treatment. I did the detox thing. I got in a couple fights, whatever it was. I did the treatment thing when I stuck it through. Did the, like, weird therapies and treatment that, like, I guess they worked because I'm clean, but I still think they're a little funky. But I went out of state, too. That was a big difference. And it wasn't an adolescent rehab. There were adults in there, which gave me a little bit more of a perspective. And also, everybody in the treatment center was like, had a DUI or something. And I was the worst in the treatment center. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people, when they get into AA, they're like, I smoked more fent than you. Like, whatever it is. Like, you want to, like, one-up people in their in their stories and tell them that like yours were worse, but I was embarrassed to do that there. But it worked out. I mean, I had my little, what do they call it? Like burning bush moment?
Oh, yeah. Epiphany.
Yeah, I had my little
Burning bush.
whatever
epiphany.
it was, and I mean, it worked out.
Oh, your moment. Yeah. A moment of clarity.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah. Like watching yourself from up here.
But also that you also, a lot of people are stuck. A lot of us are stuck many times in our lives in addiction. But you were like, you've already been stuck out there. You're, we just talked about it on the way down here. Like, there was a point in your addiction when you realized that you couldn't find the door. You didn't know how to get out. But then the moment of clarity is like, wait a minute. Maybe I do. Maybe I got people.
Yeah.
And maybe, you might have burned some but they stuck with you. They were available for you. And that was really, there was a lot of pain involved in parents of families and their kids are out on the streets and waiting for the phone call all the time. But one of the things you did a lot of really interesting things, and your parents did some really great things too. But, when I got to know you a little bit, you said, oh yeah, I always left my location on for my parents. You weren't running around, hiding, sneaking. A lot of young people, a lot of teenagers, and a lot of adults, to be honest, are like sneaking around and hiding. And you were like, no, here's where I am. I'm not gonna, shut you out or like not talk to you or anything like that. So they were at least like, you were doing a really good job of at least giving them, that comfort to know where you were.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that you and your parents kind of either openly negotiated or just organically or negotiated this thing so that when it was time, they were still available.
Yeah. It wasn't like that the first time either, though, and I think that that's why it was so easy to make the decision to, like, be so open with them about my addiction the second time around, because, first of all, I had already gotten clean and, like, snitched on myself in, like, family counseling during rehab. So, like, they knew all my sneaky shit, and also, like, for the first time I got clean for a year, I was always just, like, spitting out shit that I would, like, hide behind them, like, a year ago, and I'd be like, oh, remember that time? Oh, like, no, that was a boy in my window. Like, you weren't being delusional. Like, that did happen. So, like, I had, like, already outed myself about all this stuff. And the second time when I knew that it was going to get bad again, I was like, it would be so much more, like, maybe painful for them if they knew that I was, like, if they already knew what was going on and I was, like, gaslighting them into thinking it was something else, and then they, like, feel crazy about it. Mm-hmm. So, wasn't my intention. Also, I think one of the special things about my story is when I was in addiction that second time, I knew I wasn't going to be there forever. I knew, and that was because of my experience with recovery and being a youth in recovery the first time. Mm-hmm. I knew I wasn't going to be out there for long. I didn't know if it was going to be a month or until my 30s or whatever it was going to be, but I knew I was going to find my way back at some point. And I did, so whatever. And I also think that going to rehab was much easier because I had gone to detox beforehand, and I was able to, like, go through withdrawals and detoxing and getting back together, and, like, the fear of it wasn't as totally, like, terrifying anymore. I was like, oh, you just have to do that to, like, go through the whole situation. And also I was accepted under, like, long-lasting injectables like Suboxone and Sublocade and stuff like that, and that's been helpful and made, like, the whole getting clean thing a lot less scary. So, yeah.
And when you came back from treatment out of state, you went back to the recovery high school. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what was that like when you
scary.
returned?
So scary. I thought that everybody hated me because I had done some weird shit. Like, I don't know. I have this thing that I do, and I know that people are like drunk call people, but I like nod off call people, and like I would like FaceTime people from IQA and be like, call an ambulance, I'm dying. Just kidding, and like or like call them when I was in a fight with Mr. So and so, and like, you know, just like not ever tell them how I was doing, but then surprise pop up in their life, and like spew all my shit on them. And we all feel embarrassed about that when you get back into your right head. You think about what you did to the people that you love and that have been there for you, and you're freaking embarrassed, and you don't want to go back and do it again. But people were accepting of me, and I had to remember that, like, the people that I was friends with went through the exact same thing. It might not have been... It might not have been as bad as me. It might have been 10 times worse than me. It might have been whatever it was, but they went through the same thing. They went through the same motions. They figure the same stuff out. And I mean, yeah, my story is unique, but it's not special. Like that, like everybody else went through so many similar things, and it's unique to me because, you know, I went through whatever it was, but it was a humbling experience to go back and be like, oh, it's not normal for people out there, but it's normal for people in here. And it's not something I need to be totally ashamed about. And then I figured it out again, and I got like a leadership role, and I started like kind of working on school. I mean, I spent a while just like really focusing on my recovery, which was pretty beneficial for the first like 5-6 months. But then it was like, okay, like you gotta do something else, like figure some other stuff out around it. So yeah, I grew out of it. And then now I have very close relationships with the people at Bridges and the Recovery High School, and I got invited to go speak there, and that was nice. I like speaking to the kids. I'm hoping that there's a little bit more community this time, because I think that when I was at the school, it was very cliquey. It was like the kids who did this drug are best friends, and the kids who did these drugs are best friends, and it's like a normal high school experience, but like a little more fucked up. But also a lot more special, and like 10 times more support than anywhere else.
Right.
So.
Right.
And yeah. Also, like, I was incidentally at the school when the day you got out of treatment and first came back to the school. So I got to, like, watch you walk in and say hi to people. And that was really, really cool. Because we had been down some other little paths before that. But also then pretty in early recovery, yourself and your family, but created, like, a structure of your day, which was you know, the Recovery High School, APG Bridges, which you can elaborate on a little bit more. But then your day's kind of full, right? Because now you're around people in recovery. And then very quickly you had like a lot of structure around your day.
Routine. Figuring it out. And I think that's one of the things that I tell people, like newcomers, like there's this guy I'm talking to right now, and he just recently got clean, and like he's actually doing a pretty good job, but like the one thing that I've been recommending to him was like just like find a routine or a schedule. It doesn't have to be a good one necessarily, like sleep until 2 p.m. if you want to, but like keep that consistent for a while, so like you don't have little areas to like go fuck off in the middle of the day. And people don't need to do that forever, but like consistency and routine was so beneficial for me, like both times I got clean. And it was also one of the hardest things to do when I got sober, because I had this routine that I went through in addiction, you know, like wake up, be sick, find something to hit, and like go back to the store, find a way to get money, and then by 6 p.m. I've got some dope, come back home, nod off, and like do it all over again. So, and it worked to keep me high, so if I just flip it, it'll probably work to keep me clean.
Yeah, routine is everything. And that structure and, knowing where I was going to be that next day or that next hour was incredibly important in my early recovery as well, for sure. So Johnny showed up upon the scene where? What? How did you meet Johnny the first time? Where were you? What was happening?
So I was with my boyfriend at the time, and I had well, I'm not gonna talk about that, but I had ended up with a huge cut in my leg, you could see my tissue. And you know how big it was? It was fucking huge. And because I was on fentanyl has xylazine in it, and it cuts off the circulation it slows down circulation of your blood, so people's get abscesses or their skin rots, and a little cut on your knee can turn into your leg being amputated. That's what happened to my birth father. I would smoke with him all the time, and there was a few days I asked him about it, and he was like, oh, it's because of this that I'm doing right now, and I'm still doing it. And I was like, what? And it's you get a little cut, and now he doesn't have a leg anymore. It's because your skin literally rots, which is terrifying. But my boyfriend at the time was so freaked out about it, he was hella paranoid about what was going to happen to my leg, and he took me to the drop-in center. I didn't want to go to a doctor because I didn't want anybody knowing what my name was or how old I was or anything, because I was very scared of getting back in contact with my parents and, whatever it was. And not out of fear, but out of guilt, because I knew what I had been doing. And now looking back on it, a lot of fault goes to the boyfriend at the time, because I would ask to go home and he wouldn't let me and all that kind of stuff. But he took me to the drop-in center, and we went to the drop-in center, and I talked to Dr. Taryn, and he introduced me to Johnny. It might have been a day before or something like that, but I'd really, if they introduced me before that, I was out of it. But that day I was pretty awake and pretty clear-minded. He introduced me, and I think he said something about the teacher at the recovery high school, and
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, no.
I said, well, when I met you and you came up, I got you up there. Dr. Taryn was there. Everything's messy because you guys were in active addiction mess. And it was just a little mess on top of mess. And I think you were 15, but I didn't know then. I was like, oh, yeah, let's talk and stuff and figure some stuff out. Doctor's here and prescribe you some medication, figure out your leg and stuff. And then I said, what's your name? And you wouldn't tell me. And then we talked a little bit more. And then you started talking a little bit about the recovery high school. And I was like, oh, I got all excited, oh, recovery high school. Oh my God. Da, da, da. And then you were like, I hate Seth. That's all you said. I was like, oh, well, okay, we got some traction here. And also then at that time too, you still didn't tell me your name. I think you told the doctor for the prescribing and stuff. And then things were loosening up a little bit. Things were getting a little bit more relaxed. And, but I knew then you went to recovery high school. And that means that you know about, this option that a lot of us don't know about. And then, that whole thing, was pretty wild. And then we had to go pick up your prescription. Okay, we'll go pick up your prescription. We went to Kaiser Northgate, and I'm talking to you a little bit, and finally get the prescription, all right, where are you going to go? And you're like, I don't know. And I was like, really? It's not about and you were actually ready. You were really ready to shift right then, because you weren't trying to go back downtown. And so then I was like, oh, think about call shelter, stuff like that. And then we're driving a little bit further after we got the prescription. You said, well, maybe I should just go home. And I was like, wow, because I knew you hadn't been home in a long time. I knew that there was, a lot of things to be sort of figured out.
Yeah, what he had heard about when I referred to my parents when having conversations with Johnny, I was talking about my birth parents. I don't think you had much of an idea.
Right. I didn't have.
You didn't know the difference
about
what I was. Yeah, he didn't know the two pictures.
Things.
So he was expecting to go home and drop me off to a guy with one leg and a crazy naked lady talking about Jesus or something like that.
And then I was and then got a little clearer. Okay, you have your adopted family and stuff. Okay, but then I know you also hadn't been home in a long time, and I know, and And so I'm like, oh, well, you just showed me where to go. I was like, all right, drive down this driveway and everything. Went down there today to pick you up. And they hadn't even talked to you, I think, in a while. And we just knocked on the door. And now it's like 6:30 or 7 at night. I got a 15-year-old girl. Something positive needs to come of this interaction. I'm not really trying to drop you off on the street, right?
No.
If I could avoid that. So, and then your mom opens the door and she's like, oh, hi, Juju. And I'm all like, hi, I'm Johnny. You know, like, and they're like, come on in. And I was like, oh, phew. All right, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
And it was a little tense. They hadn't seen you in a long time.
Yeah.
But they welcomed you right in.
Yeah.
And that was actually really like the beginning of like this journey. Some other things happened. It wasn't like, oh, this is all smooth. Everything's all great from this moment. But it was the beginning of this journey towards recovery and working with the doctor. I work for Ryther, and Dr. Taryn Hansen has worked with Juju for a long time. And now, and just kind of stabilizing and things weren't all perfect right at that moment, but it was a move. And I think you're also trying to get away from some other things too. So.
Yeah. When I introduced you and I was like, you picked me up in the car, and I'm pretty sure my boyfriend at the time like asked to come with or something like that, and I was like, I don't know who said no, but somebody gave him the idea that was not happening. And I was so excited. Well, I wasn't excited to be away from him because we were very codependent at that time. Like, he was like keeping me there. It's not like he was like holding me against my will, but it would be like, I want to go home. Like, I need to tell my parents I'm okay. And he'd be like, why? Just text them. And, stuff like that. And then I would go home and he'd wait up at the top of my driveway for, I think, like 12 hours until I came back out a few times. And I'd come back up, and I knew it wasn't normal. And I'm so happy that through this whole time I knew it wasn't normal, and I was so aware that this wasn't okay, because I think if I was in that relationship for a year longer, I would have eventually like started becoming accustomed to it and thinking that, oh, he loves me. That's why, he cares or whatever it is. But it was pretty obvious to me that wasn't okay. And I knew it wasn't okay, especially because like, no matter how upset or worried or whatever my parents were, they were always very sane about the situation with the way that they thought about it. Maybe not with their actions, but the way with their thought process behind what was going on, very much a clear idea. So, yeah. They actually thought he was a good person at the beginning. They thought he was nice. But then again, I lied to them. I was like, he's so good. He's perfect for me. Hey, he's wonderful.
Quite often things start out a certain way. And also people want to believe in the good, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's the thing. You're showing up, like people, and that's in addicts in active addiction, we take advantage of people who want to believe in the good. Right. We're like, we target that. We're like,
Yeah. There's like, I'm trying to remember, there's like, I think they figured out he wasn't the best when they kept my mom. I mean, I could say so much stuff about my mom, but there was this one time where this is after I run away, and I think another part where they believed me is because I actually wasn't doing that bad at this time. I wasn't doing fentanyl. My friend Carlos had passed away. I was definitely in a depression, but in a manic depressive episode. Like, I wanted to do everything and anything, and of course, it was one of the most selfish things I think I've ever done. But it was also like, I was sad and I was depressed, but I used his death as an excuse to hurt myself more. But then I also used it as an excuse to let people hurt myself and let people let me use and whatever it was. And I mean, it didn't work, but it definitely like kind of pushed a lot of stuff to the side for a little bit. When I was talking to you about like my aha moment when I was downtown, that was at a point where there was no naiveness in my parents at all. Like, they knew what was going on. But then here, was only smoking weed. I was drinking, and I think I might have been doing like Xanax or Coke every once in a while, but it wasn't that intense. But I mean, whether I was just, even if my drug of choice was like water, I was not doing good at the time. Yeah. But they had seen me so much worse that they were like, oh, that's okay. Like, for example, like my little brother, he's not going to school that much. He's working on it. He has his goals. He's going as much as he goes to, like, actually the last few days he's been going a bunch, so I'm very proud of him. But when he was in middle school, last year in middle school, I don't think, like, he would go, like, 2 weeks in a row, maybe only going to, like, one class or something like that. So it's like, what he's doing now isn't the ideal, but it's so much better than it was. Yeah. So it's really easy to distract you from the fact that, like, this isn't great. And I think that that's what was going on with me. Of course, it was a much more intense situation, but they saw me doing bad, but not as bad, and that can play tricks on people, especially when you just want to keep them alive. So
that's reminded me a little bit about when I got to know you, and I work with a lot of young people in a lot of different environments, a lot of different phases of their life, but they're all young. And when you would talk to me about your brother and your family and your care for your mom and your dad, and also I actually wrote a bunch of notes that I'm not going to get to because you're actually doing a really good job of filling up some things. But one of the things that I just realized is how much, like a lot of young people, you're 15, 16, 17, now you're 18, cared. You really cared about these people. You cared about your brother. You cared about your mom. You cared about your dad. I remember we were at Ryther and we had to meet, and then we had to kick your mom out. Remember those weird first meetings? We brought Dr. Tarrant up there, and we had to have some confidential stuff. And you always said, I love you. And I was kind of like, in my mind, I was like, is that one of them codependent things, or is that like real, like, and it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is, and then as all this kept on, I kept on watching you grow and change and mature, and how much you actually cared about the people in your life, and this kind of like care and empathy and thought for your brother, and that actually doesn't happen for a lot of people. Or a lot of people, it takes them a little bit longer to start really caring about others. And I have a lot of respect for you in regards to that, and the way that you actually feel people, even the friends that you've met at the school. And there's some people that you're close to, some you're not. But you and I both have talked about some of them. But you still have that compassion as a teenager.
Well,
I respect that.
Yeah. And you've done some training, haven't you? Or you're doing training. Is it to be a peer
support specialist? I'm wanting to do that, but I'm enjoying my job that I have right now, which is like the most mainstream job. But I mean, it works for me. And I think when I stepped away from the recovery high school and like finished my time there, like at the end of my first senior year, I was doing really good, actually, and I can say that about myself. I was doing really good. I've always been like, people say immature. I don't like to say that about myself because I think in a lot of ways I'm very immature, but I can say that I'm also like, I will say that I'm very self-aware, and like when I am immature, I'm able to recognize that. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing, but I can see that like, I would say like, I describe it as like babysitting myself, like, oh, that's fucked up. Why are you doing that? But like, I'm not going to stop, you know what I mean? But I'm able to recognize that, I know good and bad, and I know the difference between healthy and unhealthy, and sometimes I just like unhealthy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can relate.
Yeah.
This reminded me of a couple of things, but one of them was early on, we're doing all this stuff, you're stabilizing, recovery, going to school, medication. There's a couple of things. One of the things, it is in my notes, it's like that you would like supposed to be going to school and you'd be sleeping all, till really late, like sometimes like all day. And I was like, oh my God, there's something really wrong. What are we going to do? She's sleeping all day. And then I'm like, there's the schools in place and all these things that are happening. And I told Dr. Taryn, I was like, man, like Juju's just sleeping all day. And she goes, Johnny, I think she needs the rest. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll accept that. And then like as all these things kept building in your life and you kept addressing things and doing things and activating different parts of your life, you were able to find your way. And I think maybe you did need the rest, because people need rest after all that.
I was sleeping a lot.
The other thing I remember, it's still funny because I even want to ask you now, but I was like, I work with all these therapists and I work at Ryther and there's lots of therapists. And I'm like, even some of them know of you. They know of Juju. It's like, maybe Juju needs a therapist. So I asked you one day, I'm like, and you're like, Johnny, do you know how many therapists I've had in my life? You know how many therapists I've talked to? Don't think I really am ready to have a therapist right now. And I was like, okay, leave it be. Then I started thinking about like the people that you're in the recovery high school, you're going to APG Bridges after school program. You have Seth, you had people at the school that you were close to, the teachers that you were close to. Then you have Hannah and Trisha, and then you built relationships with a lot of other people. Different adults in your life doing different things, and you were, really good at like utilizing those relationships, and that's pretty therapeutic, And so that going to meetings, meeting people there, having young people in recovery, having older people, and you're also really good with like people from kind of all different groups and ages and where they're coming from, and you're very like flexible in your welcoming of people, I think.
Yeah. I think I want to say about therapy is that one, because I was adopted out of a traumatic upbringing, like in motels, mom OD'd, stuff like that, fucking my dad being friends with like pedophiles and bringing them over to the house and all that kind of stuff, like beer on the gums, make the baby go to sleep, that kind of weird old school shit. But because I came out of that one in the foster care system, it was like the second I got adopted, they were like, put her in play therapy. So I was in therapy from ages 2 years old. 2 years old. How do I even speak to a therapist? Up until 12 years old, when I was like, fuck that, I'm not going anymore. I don't need therapy anymore. I am my own therapy. I found drugs, whatever. And I came back, and now I'm in AA, and AA works for me, and I think it works, or not AA, NA, all the programs, 12-step. 12-step works for me, and I think the reason it works for me is because, and especially having a sponsor, is because my sponsor, he's able to open up to me about the stuff that he was at, and that's what never worked with me in therapy, is I never knew anything about them. And right. I can't open up to people if I don't know that you're a little fucked up too. How am I going to tell you my fucked up shit if you can't tell me your fucked up shit? Especially because, like, I'm a selfish person, and I'm always thinking about myself, so I'm like, you just think you're, like, so holy, like, oh, you're so good, you can't say anything. Nobody said that, it's just I don't know anything. And my sponsor's able to, like, open up about something that's going on, and he'll tell me something that he did that was 10 times worse. And I'm not judging at all. It's more of a, I understand, thank you, and it's much easier to talk when you know a person. And also, like, the whole, like, and how does that make you feel? I hate that stuff. Like, the whole therapy, the therapy language. And also, I was just speaking about this with a friend yesterday. I think a lot of the therapists that have, like, feed into the patient's, like, victim complex about stuff. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry that happened. They should have been, and I need somebody to tell me, no, you were in the wrong that time. You fucked up, and maybe I need to cry about it and beat myself up for a day or two, but, like, that's needed for character development, so and I never got that from a therapist. Also, I was 2. I wasn't getting anything from a therapist. So.
No, none of us recommend that people beat themselves up, but I guess you're at a point where you can say, hey, maybe I should beat myself up for a day or 2.
Just a little bit. If I hit day 3, I'll stop.
There you go. There's something incredible about the power of getting to share and be honest with someone that has walked a journey similar to mine, that understands the places I've been and the places I go in my head, right, about things now that I'm in recovery. There's still like lifing. And I love that. Like, no matter where I am on the planet, if I walk into a meeting and I talk with someone, I am going to hear that shared experience that we have. Some of the ways that we feel about ourselves, some of the ways we think about things. And I think that it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen and had the honor to do is to really walk with people as they are moving through their journey of recovery in whatever way. And if something, and what I've found is like everything that's happened in my life up till this moment, back when I was actively using and then in early recovery and like dealing with different parts of my life, like every single part of that at one point or another has been beneficial for me to share with somebody that's going through something where that story, that part of my life has meaning for them and brings hope and shows that we can walk through things. And I think there's like nothing like that. And I'm so grateful that I am in a community of like-minded people who have that shared purpose of freedom from active addiction and, living a life of freedom and service and purpose today. And it sounds a lot like you have experienced that and have a capacity for that, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Look, Heather's sharing. I've known Heather Venegas for 31 years. So that's pretty cool.
That's very
Actually,
cool.
we were driving down here and we were talking about, we do have our own language in recovery. Like, I am in recovery. Juju's in recovery. Obviously, now Heather Venegas is obviously talking to us about being in recovery. But and we do have a world in which we learn a lot about a lot of different things. But we were talking about normies, who are people who are non-addict alcoholics who are able to, do whatever and not have problems. And then, kind of true addict alcoholics. I claim myself as one. And then the in-betweeners that don't fit in either category. And really we were talking about young people and how they're trying to navigate things, and maybe this total abstinence, being in recovery, hardcore, like stuff that we've actually ended up embracing. Other people think it's hardcore. We think it's life-saving. Well, I think it's life-saving. And that there are other young people especially that are trying to navigate things and they don't know yet. And they could be an in-betweener. We don't know. We can't say like anything about that except that it causes a little bit of fear if you're in addiction and then you get in recovery and then you decide to use. It causes us I'm like concerned. I'm much more concerned than saying like, well, good luck, I hope you have fun. I'm more like, but people do navigate things differently. I've just been gifted with this part of being with Juju and just doing a lot of different things now. And it's been some crisis in the beginning and then some just kind of figuring things out, and then a whole lot of not crisis is actually what it's been, a whole lot of not crisis. And I have a lot of other, in my work life, there's a lot of crisis and a lot of trauma and a lot of drama. And I was just thinking about this coming down here today. I was doing a bunch of stuff with other young people yesterday, and then I got a call to the overdose center, the Orca Center, because they had a young person there. When they have someone there, we come down. This is post-overdose. This person has overdosed. They've been revived. And they want to bring them into the center and offer them a bunch of stuff. And if they're under 25, one of me or my team goes down. And the person didn't want to they were in the ambulance, they got out, and then they were like, oh, I'm going to go for a walk. And then I'm going to go smoke. And then they kind of walked down the street, and the doctor, the fire department, Health 99 was there. And then they chased him down the street. So I walked down, introduced myself, and kind of stood back, because a lot of times we're not trying to be that much in people's business, when we're doing outreach. And then I realized later the doctor was in this person's face, just like really nicely trying to get them to come inside, but super nice. And I was like, damn, they're really going hard. And I was like, and the social worker too, person didn't come in. They just went and took off, went around the corner. And then later on, when I was riding my bike home from Ryder, I thought because a lot of times we want to give people space. This person's overdosed twice in the last 3 days. They just got reversed. So whatever sense of urgency that we might have for that situation is warranted. And then I think about Juju, sitting with Juju, coming down here, joking, talking about recovery, and it's not a funeral and it's not a memorial. It's a person that's alive that's thriving, and then just watching this is the big deal in the trauma in the fentanyl crisis. It is dominated by people dying. And as a matter of fact, I don't think we hear about it enough. I don't, because I get the King County dashboard, and 2.5 to 3 people die every day in King County. So, and it's overwhelming, right? But in the midst of that overwhelming thing that's happening where we live, we're also able to witness people in recovery, and very, very specifically young people in recovery. It's also I've had quite a few different clients at Recovery High School. I've known Seth for a long time, and they're really part of the beginning of the Recovery High School. But now sometimes I just go up there because I just want to be around a bunch of young people in recovery. I actually have no reason to go. Juju's gone. My other couple of people are gone. I just think I just want to go sit in a room with a bunch of young people in recovery and be in that group and just have that kind of energy, the beauty of the energy of young people navigating their way in the middle of this. These are all pandemic, fentanyl epidemic young people, right? You guys came up in that.
Yeah.
This is Juju's pandemic epidemic kid.
Yeah.
You're 18. And so that part we have to remember. What you have navigated. It was really hard for all them kids that weren't in addiction and out there smoking fentanyl.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I also think it's hard for everyone around it too.
Absolutely.
I think that's something that sometimes gets ignored a little bit, because there'll be an addict and they have the parents, and I kind of noticed this 6 or 7 months ago, and I was like, wow, all this focus is on me right now. But my parents went through recovery at the exact same time I was. And when I was going through addiction, they were going through their hard part too. And when I got clean, they went through their recovery. And I mean, one of my parents can be a little bit explosive sometimes, but I kind of sit back and I realize, and I'm like, you know what? I'm growing and they're growing too. It's all our first time living.
Right.
And no one knows how to do any of this, and that's okay. And, sometimes I'm like, damn, you couldn't have been a little bit better in there, but whatever. I was a piece of work, and I don't expect everyone around me to be perfect after that either, but I'm very lucky to have been able to have parents that put themselves literally in a program, not Al-Anon, a support group for parents with young children in recovery, and also young children who are out there using drugs. And there are a few other parents in there with parents of kids who went through the fentanyl epidemic, and I mean, it's the same way how it's like we go into an AA or an NA meeting and we're like, wow, that's intriguing. Like, you did the exact same thing I did. And I think that they had almost the exact same experience. They came in and they were like, yeah, that sucked. Like, we both went through that. We both know how it feels, and it makes you feel a lot less alone. Because I'm sure my parents were embarrassed before that, or like felt, embarrassed, felt guilty. What did I do wrong? All this stuff. And then I'm sure they went through their phase of like, it's not my fault, we tried everything, or whatever it was. But then, you get to see other parents who felt and went through the exact same things and the exact same feelings and all that kind of stuff. So I'm grateful that I have parents that were willing to put themselves in a situation to heal and learn from this, and not just be like, you shouldn't have did that, or look at it as a moral failure when it's not. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Did they, Juju, was the program that they joined, was that in connection with the high school or Bridges Alternative Peer Group, or
Bridges.
was that somewhere separate?
Bridges has a parent group, and they have a parent group on one of the days out of the week. Yeah, Monday. And it's like the last hour, and all the parents will come and they'll go talk in a room, and they'll do the exact, and I mean, they're not the ones on drugs, but they do the exact same thing we do in an AA or an NA meeting. And they talk about what's on their mind, these weird behaviors that don't relate to everybody else and how it's affecting them. Or, sometimes, I mean, confidentiality, I can't say this, but sometimes my counselor will come in and tell me that my dad was just bragging about me that day. Or, and then it got to the end. My dad, he retired and he has a new job now, so he can't go back. But at the end of when he was there, it was like he was able to help other parents.
Right.
And we went through the exact same situation. We were the one that was helpless and needed help and needed like everybody to come up and hold my hand and wipe my butt. And now we get to wipe the butt, which I think is so much greater. And I think it was a big eye-opener for my parents that they were able to turn it into something positive, too. Because I can't even imagine how much of a weight it is on you. But I don't get to imagine it because, I mean, I was in a different situation. But I don't know. I think it's a lot more similar than people.
So, and they were going to that group when you were both in recovery and when you were out there.
Yeah.
Right? So that the parents, you go into this parent support group. I've been there a couple of times. There's all these different parents with other kids at all these different levels. But you have committed parents, and they're going, at one time your kid's in recovery, one time, something else happened, they fell off, or they're out there, you don't even know where they are. You're still going to the support group. Then your kid comes back, engages in these things, is in recovery, but and there's other parents where their children are going through those different phases too. So it's not like, and then, they can support people and actually be like, yeah, we were coming to this group and we didn't even know where that girl was, or we knew she was out there, right? And that's a pretty powerful thing, I think. I think it's very powerful.
Yeah. I don't think I'm breaking confidentiality because I'm not naming any names, but there's a parent at the Bridges support group whose kid is not in recovery anymore. But she's like one of the biggest leaders at that parent group, and she helps set things up, and she helps, you should come here. And it's like, how we get clean and we kind of want everybody around us to get clean too. And, most of them have issues, but probably some of them don't, and they don't really need to be there. It's like, you do that thing because you're so excited about, like, I want you to feel how this feels.
Right.
And some people already feel like that without the recovery, so I guess, whatever. But there's this one mom, and she's there, and her kid is not in recovery anymore. He was for a little bit, and then he stopped, and I guess he's in an okay place right now. But, I mean, she still shows up all the time, and I think it's actually kind of wonderful that she's able to give the perspective of the parent that can only be there to support and can't do anything right now, especially with all these new parents coming in who, want to put their kid in rehab right now and, save them from all this danger, which inevitably is what you need to do, but it's also like, what happens when they turn 18 and they can say no? You know what I mean? And that was also another reason why I think I said 5 more days. So I was like, the second I turn 18, I'm going to say no to rehab.
Oh.
And I'm going to be able to be the one that's going to...
I'm going to be an adult.
Yes, I'm going to be an adult. I can say no to doing that. I can, you know, whatever it is. But doing it before I turned 18 was pretty good idea. So
yeah, a lot of things. There's a couple of things. This is reminding me of one of the funny things about meeting you, and I hate Seth part is that, you know, that's when, you know, I knew immediately like we have some traction here, and also like that this person is this person and this school and all these people around that whole situation are very instrumental in this process in young people's lives. And we even were driving down talking about Seth too, and talking about our own growth around how to approach these things, and about Seth's too, and about how Seth, you know, is listening to what other people are saying and how we're engaging, and how the Recovery High School is so well established, but also we all have to like support and also grow and change and flex and make it as welcoming. Seth, we talk about this a lot with Seth too, like as welcoming as we can for a lot of different young people. Mm-hmm. I mean, the foundation's the foundation. We talked about this, right?
yeah.
But we're actually there is this thing in recovery called open-mindedness, right?
I don't know what that is. I'm just kidding.
So I mean that process, but also if you have a young person and you're trying to figure, they go to treatment, whatever, and then they have, then where are they going to go after that? And you know, outpatient is kind of a stretch, and then you can there's this option in Seattle with the Recovery High School and with the after school program, and then a lot of young, I mean, one of those young people did all that and now, but you know, went to Bridges for a while. Now she's going to go get a job and she wants to move out, you know, in a little while, but they're like rapidly kind of making mature decisions that I really admire. Yeah. Well, there was one other funny story I'm forgetting. I'm sure it's in my notes. One of my
Can we share
Jujuisms.
with the audience, for those who might not know, what Ryther is, and the drop-in center is the University District Youth Center? Is that correct?
Oh yeah, where Juju came. Yeah.
And kind of how you support the places you support, Johnny?
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm employed by a place called Ryther. It's in North Seattle. It's been around for, they'll tell me, 108 years or something like that. It's actually not far from where Juju lives. It's a big campus. We've had a lot of residential programs there now. Currently, a lot of outpatient mental health. Children with many different needs are able to come to the Ryther campus. And kind of after I worked for Ryther in substance use at a recovery house, and then there was a program called Group Care Enhancement, and I was asked if I could work in a residential program. I worked at the Spruce Street Secure Crisis Residential Center. And then somebody came to me one day and said, "Would you like to work with homeless youth?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. I'm chilling here." I think it was Jim Bolendroff, actually, from the county back then. And then I went to a homeless youth drop-in center. It was really messy. It was like chaotic, and it was kind of meth 1.0. And I didn't see the beauty, actually. When I first walked in, I saw the mess. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no. And it's like, well, you should check it out. And sure enough, I went to UDYC and then ended up working there for 14 years. It's now transitioned and is run by another organization, and it's not really a drop-in center. But at the same time, they said, "Oh, by the way, would you also like to work at Orion Center?" So I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." So then I just got immersed in working with homeless youth in drop-in center environments. And then out of that, a clinic was built at the Orion Center by Dr. Jennifer Hook and Kaiser Partnership Youth Care, Kaiser Ryther. And out of that clinic, we started a program to support young people with opiate use disorder. And then out of that came the MAP program, which is my coworker, Abigail Woods, Tal Rizzo, Dr. Taryn Hansen. And that was actually, we started building that before, I call it BF, before fentanyl. There's BF and AF. Back in the day, we called BC, before crack, and after crack. Now I hope, we're going to have some other conversation about fentanyl in the future, but we started that program before, 2020, 21. And then from that, with just the fentanyl epidemic, just like wreaking havoc in our county, and then kind of built out of that. So that's part of Ryther, and it's really not the same as the traditional old Ryther. It's kind of interesting here with Juju, because Juju, I got over 15 young people that were kind of going to high school, maybe smoking weed, maybe drinking, maybe they were getting in trouble, juvenile detention stuff. And within a 1-year period, they're in withdrawal from fentanyl. And so we ended up working with a lot of young people that weren't homeless, that were living at home with one parent or two or whatever. And Juju actually knows a bunch of them, but just because it's a small city when these things happen. And really, like, a lot of those young people have navigated their way out of the mess, really, of some of them have died, and we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge that. But just really a lot of stuff that we've been able to do to work with young people and work with under 18 people and work with just really bringing a lot of hopefully helpful, well, not hopefully, I know they're helpful services to people who are younger, adolescents and stuff like that. So that's kind of Ryther. The University District Youth Center currently exists at 45th and 15th. Right now it's a partnership with Street Youth Ministries, Roots Young Adult Shelter, the Doorways Project, UW Doorways Project, Ryther, and Teen Feed. That's a whole bunch of people. Turns out there's a whole bunch of homeless young people in the U District. And so we provide a lot of different varying services. We have mental health there. Our team is there. And so, it's transitioned in some respects. And I'm also kind of like, really continue to support and work on partnerships so that someone's in the building when somebody walks through the door and says, can you help me with their leg, when really they need some help for something else? Yeah. Can I get a drink of water when it's really about something else a lot.
Thank you so much, you two, for being here with me today. This has been a wonderful conversation. And as we're wrapping up, I'd like to give each of you just a quick moment to share one thing that you hope for the future, for youth and for our world, that you'd like to share with our audience.
I went first.
She did.
You did a good job going first. What I hope. I hope I'll be out of a job, but, that's not turning out to be the case, and it won't be the case. It gets all serious then, because I could hope for a lot of really cool things, like, that I just have a sailing program and everybody wants to learn how to go sail and, do cool stuff outdoors. The people are dying, and that's the thing, is like, people are dying of addiction at a rate that's never been seen. And I'm fully hopeful for the time when that's not happening, because it's brutal. And that's what I hope for. I'm just sharing the beauty and sharing the joy and sharing recovery and participating in helping other people know about recovery is extremely important, but it is brutal, man. When, if you're not alive, you don't get it. So that's kind of, my hope.
Thank you, Johnny.
I have a few things. One, I think it's an unrealistic wish to stop heavy drug use and overdose. But I do hope it stops here. This is the worst it gets because it's so terrible right now. And unfortunately, I can't imagine worse. I can imagine much worse, realistically. But if I could hope for one thing, I would hope that where we're at right now is just kind of where it stays. Because I don't see this backing up in the next 10 years. And I say that because the first time I hit fentanyl was the best thing I've ever touched in my life. And I can't blame someone for wanting to do it again. At all. So I can blame someone for what they do when they're on it and how it hurts and the actions and the disappointment that they're giving the people around them and the sorrow and chances they're gonna die, but I can't blame them for taking another hit because I know I did, and I know it was the best feeling I've ever had in my life. At that point in my life. And I think the other thing is I wish addiction with youth in general was a little bit more normalized. And I was talking about this when me and you were trying to figure out the speech thing, but the first time 12 years old I'd done meth, it was just a thing I did. 12. I went to the Cowlitz Tribal Health Center and they told me, well, we think you have a problem with substance use. And I was like, okay. And I was expected to be told rehab, and they were like, but you're too young for this to be the problem's not big enough. And in some way I kind of agree. I'm kind of glad I got worse so I could get better. I think that I could have gotten better without it, but the way that my story's gone so far, I think that I kind of needed my little poopy moment. But yeah, I think for me it wasn't necessary, but it was beneficial. It benefits me now. It didn't benefit me then. It benefits me now. So I don't know. I wish people just educated themselves on it, and I also wish that more people would recognize addiction as genetic. Because I was also just talking to Johnny about this. I was only with my birth parents for 2 years before I came back when I was 11, and my addiction jump started before I went back to them. And I don't remember what I saw at 1-2 years old, but it came back. So and the amount of times I've seen that with other people. So I wish that people were it could happen to anybody. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's not just the people with bad impulse control.
Right. Right.
And also taking the first hit is a choice, but the second hit is also a choice, but it's a bit different. Yeah, that's all. What about you?
She's throwing it back.
Good throw. Wasn't expecting that. My hope is that we have more recovery high schools and more Bridges alternative peer groups.
More Johnnies.
In every county of our state and in every state across the country and every place in the world where they're needed, that there are services and peer support and family groups and help for all of us as we're navigating the different roles we may have in having ourselves or a loved one with mental health and or a substance use disorder, and that we can support youth in getting the help they need when they need it, before we lose them, especially during this time. And that, the stigma can be erased, that people will stop calling us animals and scum, and all the things that we get labeled with, that people can understand that we're human too, and that as long as we're above ground and breathing, there's always hope. We can and do recovery, especially if we're met with the services and supports that we need when we're willing to take them and use them. And my hope is that one day there's a world where we don't see people that way, where we see us as all human beings. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you to Orbit Audio, to this gorgeous studio that we're in today in Normandy Park, to the King County Behavioral Health and Recovery Division for helping to make this podcast possible. And at this time, I would like to just encourage everyone listening to participate in a campaign that King County Recovery Coalition is running right now. It's called Gratitude for the Frontlines. And what we're doing is asking people to nominate someone who's touched their recovery journey, like Johnny Ohta has touched Juju's recovery journey. Whether it's yourself or a loved one's journey, or maybe it's a colleague or a peer that you work with in an organization in behavioral health, you can go to kcrecovery.org, and there you'll find, you can click on a button to get our nomination form. You can nominate as many people as you want. We want to say thank you and shine a light and appreciation on the amazing people that work in behavioral health, whether it's peers, recovery coaches, therapists, outreach workers, people at treatment centers, people at the Orca Center, any type of place where people are receiving care for substance use and or mental health challenges. We would love to say thank you, and please help us do that. We'll have the nominations open for the next 2 months. So please go to kcrecovery.org and nominate your amazing behavioral health frontline workers today. Thank you, and happy holidays.